Hello, everybody. Welcome to Hacking HR. This is the session year-end wrap-up, leveraging year-end insights for strategic 2025 planning. I'll be your host and moderator today, Ryan Kwan. I'm a principal analytics leader at Transcarent, the one place for health and care. Just a little bit about myself. My background is in public health and data science, extracting insights from program utilization and claims data to inform data-driven decisions for HR leaders on our panel, and much like in the audience, in choosing the right vendor to partner with to reduce spend and produce a more seamless health benefit experience for employees. And now I, fortunately, have the privilege of being the benefactor of those insights from this amazing panel of thought leaders here on how to leverage some of that year-end data to make that 2020 from 2024 to make an actionable plan for 2025. Our session today will cover 4 learning objectives. What were the key takeaways from the challenges and successes of 2024? How can these insights be leveraged to set strategic goals for the coming year? What are the critical areas that need attention in 2025 based on the previous year's performance? And how can organizations ensure continuous improvement through year-end reviews? Our hope is that you'll walk away from this session with fresh perspectives, frameworks, and competencies to apply to your own 2025 planning. So without further ado, let me introduce this amazing panelist that we have today, starting with Burjette.
Hello, good morning, and good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are in the world. My name is Burjette White. I live in Atlanta, Georgia, and I lead HR for the Adecco Group in the Americas, looking after end-to-end HR people and processes and culture in our organization for the Americas and work as part of our global team. So really excited to be here today and share a bit more of our insights on what we're thinking about, what I'm thinking about it, and hope that you all can gain something from that as well. And I'd love to hear from the rest of the panelists.
Thank you, Burjette. And we'll go in alphabetical order so we can keep the flow going as well. So Guinevere.
I think you have to come back right now.
We'll go over to Melissa.
Hi there, all. Thank you for this great opportunity. My name is Melissa Moore. I am based on the West Coast in Portland, Oregon. I'm a VP of People for a company called Ampere Computing, and we're in the technology and semiconductor space. My role is primarily focused on talent, so talent acquisition, talent management, also supporting our culture and engagement activities. So I really look forward to this panel because a lot of my world really depends on what are the goals for 2025 and how we take all of that learning and data we've had this year and apply it to our people plans for the coming year, and certainly in support of the business. So look forward to the panel. Thank you, Ryan.
Thanks, Melissa. And I'll turn it back to you, Guinevere.
Sorry about that. Yes, I'm Guinevere Curry. I am founder and CEO of Guide to HR, as well as the VP of Global People Operations for Lilt, which is an AI language localization company. And yeah, I'm out in the Utah mountains, so enjoying my snow-covered mountains already, and really looking forward to discussing this, learning from each other, and hopefully those watching will also learn. There's so much to look back on in 2024, and I think in the HR space, we're always constantly shifting and being agile, and it's going to be another wild ride for us in 2025. So looking forward to this conversation. Thanks.
Awesome. Well, looking forward to this wild ride for this session as well. So Renzi, last but not least, turn it over to you for an introduction.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Renzi. I am based in Dubai. I am the managing director and founder of Perky People, where we design happy workplaces. It's an employee experience specialist boutique agency. I'm very excited about today's session because I'm keen to understand what's the insights from the other side of the world when it comes to what's happening in this space. So I'm sure a lot of you have already finished your engagement, culture survey, pulse survey, whatever it is, to get information from people that will feed into your strategy. So really looking forward to this conversation. Thank you so much, Ryan.
All right, so let's go ahead and get started. I have questions prepared for each of you to start. And oh yeah, Renzi, thank you for joining us around dinner time. I'm joining around breakfast time on the West Coast over here. So we got the full spectrum of the world, global perspectives represented today. But Renzi, I'm going to keep the spotlight on you and ask your first question. Given your expertise in employee experience and design, how can year-end insights be applied to improve employees' engagement and well-being?
I think I'll start with, instead of year end, because when you talk about well-being, you don't want only to use the output of any engagement survey towards the end of the year. What really you want when it comes to well-being, to identify like future initiatives or programs, you want a more frequent one. But to go back to your question around like, oh, how do you prepare for next year? So what you essentially would like to do is look at all the data from whatever happened in the past year, all your initiatives, all your programs, feedback, numbers, and like these things will tell a story on what you need to do for next year. At least where I operate here in the Middle East, big thing that keeps coming up is people are fearful about their jobs because of AI. I don't know in other parts of the world, but it's like moving at lightning speed here in this part of the region, where everyone is going shopping left, right, center on the best and the latest and the greatest when it comes to AI platforms. And then on top of that, because of that fear, there's also this sentiment of people feeling overworked, because normally, I don't know, again in other parts of the world, but in this part of the world, towards the end of the year, Q4, people are cramming everything they could to finish all the projects, because whatever they have committed in the beginning of the year, they want to make sure, I want to finish everything. So oftentimes this leads to like major burnout and people not ending the year on a high, and then people feeling frustrated, like, oh, if this is going to be my next year, then you will then start seeing people leaving organizations. So I think for me, my message is to making sure, don't just base your plan for next year to inform your well-being strategy on one survey. Look at all the data touch points throughout the year, but also investigate where you can maybe run a focus group, workshops with leaders in different levels of the organization. In a way, what I'm trying to say is triangulate your data so that you have a more rounded approach to something that will inform your plan for 2025.
Thank you, Renzi. That's insightful. Like similarly, I guess as we collect data and try to extract insights, sounds like let's not try to cram it all into Q4, but hopefully we are taking advantage of this continuous feedback loop throughout the year through a variety of different collection mechanisms as well. So that's great insight. Burjette, I'm going to turn it over to you and ask you a question. In your experience with strategic HR talent management, how can organizations today align their goals with insights from past year?
Sure. So I think it's a time of year, Ryan, where not only is HR or talent management doing planning, but it's the business time to plan and look ahead for the year. And it's so important that those two elements go hand in hand. The people priorities cannot stand outside of the business priorities. And in so doing, it's a time to think about what did we do in the past year from a business standpoint? How did the business run? What are our opportunities? What are our focus areas for 2025? Oftentimes in most industries, I would assume they want to grow. So what does that look like? And then it's also the time to think about talents and people. So do we have the right people with the skills? And it's not so much that we need to hire new talents, but how do we retool and reskill and think about how to best position our internal teams within an organization to prepare ourselves for the focus for next year. And this is now the time to do that. So it's oftentimes a bit of workforce planning, but a bit more of the talent planning, if you will. So thinking about the full year, where do we need to go? We talk a lot about AI. I know that'll come up in today's conversation. And as Renzi said, while there's a view that AI might be taking jobs, it might take the jobs as they exist today, but that might mean then how do we retool our teams for the future? And being very clear and understanding what our business priorities allows us then as an HR organization, talent management team, to think through how do we best position our teams? Where do we need to invest in new learning? Where do we need to invest in skills that might be different than what the team has today? And in the instance where you do need to hire talent externally, what does that look like specifically? What is that talent profile? And those areas really need to work hand in hand with our business teams then. So for me, as I think about it, the strategic talent management plan is lockstep with the business plan, and then you work that together for the future.
That's great, Brigitte. And yeah, definitely resonate with that. There's a lot of internal capabilities that we might not be taking advantage of. Let's turn some of our attention to the talent that we already have and see how we can upskill them before necessarily like let's opening up the talent door and hiring a lot of external as well. So especially since AI is advancing at such a rapid pace, I mean, it's nice to have the domain knowledge of the existing pool, just kind of add additional skills rather than just having to train both someone new on the domain of your company and AI capabilities as well. So great insight. I'm going to turn it over to you, Guinevere. With your background in organizational development, yeah, how can organizations use year-end insights to enhance workforce planning?
I think seeing where you've been and where you're trying to go, and then what is it that you need to really do. So what I mean by that is when you're looking at your org, what tools do you have? What is your structure of your teams? Are they working efficiently and effectively? And are you missing something? So I work with startups. That's primarily the group I work with. And so it's a lot of fun. That's why I have a lot of background in the organizational development, because I come in and they usually don't have HR at all. So I'm a tool guy. I love technology. So it's fun to bring in technology to these different orgs. But what I find is that a lot of times, especially with AI, different departments bring in different tools that they think are really cool. And then all of a sudden, if you actually go up like that 10 to 100,000 foot level, you see like you have so many tools that are just all over the place, half used, half not. Maybe you're actually paying more than if you just went and found a bigger tool that is going to be kind of your all-encompassing, maybe your foundation, that maybe you layer on some subject matter tools that are going to be more efficient for marketing versus HR versus finance. But this is something I'm starting to see a trend in, is that different departments will go out and do a trial. And then, oh, it's only like, $10 a month, or maybe it's like $250 for the whole year or whatever it might be. It seems really nominal, but all of a sudden now you have 100, 200, 500 people who are doing that, and your technology stack has gotten crazy. So I think from an org design, when I think about it from a technology perspective, is really getting up to that high level picture and figuring out what is the right tool as your baseline, and then being very transparent with your org about what it is that you expect them to do and how they're going to use this tool. And then from there, it's also looking at the people side, right? How are the people using these tools? How are they working within their subcultures of their teams, even maybe cross-functionally? And then reevaluate. Just because you always had a baseline department of finance doing XYZ doesn't mean that they can't do other things. Kind of going what Brigitte was saying is that, upskill your teams, right? And have them have the ability to do different things. Maybe they want to get into project management and do something different from that perspective. How could they actually do that as a cross-functional team where they can bring on more to the organization while they're growing professionally? And then finally, I'd love to also, Renzi, you were saying a lot of people try to cram in Q4 items. So I think it's also, as human resources, we're working with our people, helping our leaders be more empathetic about what's going on, and especially on the time of holidays too, where it's like, does the org really need to get this done before December 31st? Or can it be done maybe by mid-February? Or is this something where, because the org shifted, so many of us need to be agile now, especially with the introduction of AI. Maybe it's like, well, that was great. We really want that, but it's okay that it's going to take another 6 months because we had to focus on this other bigger project. So making sure that your leaders and your manager people are really understanding what the business needs are, and helping the employees understand that, yeah, we want to get that done, but it's okay that it doesn't happen. Or if it does, then understanding what else is on their plate to help shift things so that they are not feeling that overwhelm, burdening out, and then starting to look for a job.
It's great, Guinevere. I like the connection too. It's like a lot of this happening right now is what Renzi was saying. Q4 is mad rush. We might be quick to make some reactive decisions, whether it's hiring quickly externally, as Brigitte was saying, or adopting so many technologies without really considering how all of those pieces connect for the workforce. And now we have this fragmented kind of set of tools that aren't necessarily, or maybe slowing us down or costing us more in the long run. So it's good to take that 100,000 foot, maybe 1 million foot view, even just to kind of see, hey, what's this landscape looking like right now from our own set of AI tools internally as well. So I really appreciate that insight. I'm going to turn it over to you, Melissa, to wrap up this particular session or section. With your focus on people-first cultures, how can past insights inform talent strategies for 2025?
Yeah, of course. So I think great comments from the panel, and I would maybe try to bring it together into some of the different elements that folks talked about, and then my perspective as well. So when I think about looking forward using, what we've experienced this year, I look at external factors. So what's happening in the market. I work in the tech space. It's been, as we were talking before, been a bit of a wild ride in terms of what's happening with, the economy and the market and different tech companies. So there may be some uncertainty, right? And how do you build that into your people plans to support them as they look forward into the coming year? So external factors, what's happening there, internal factors, and a number of you all touched on this, right? So what is the business strategy? What data do you have from year-end reviews? Are there performance things? Are there learning goals, as we were touching on? What's happening with retention data? So some of you kind of intuited this, but at the year end, are people then thinking, oh, it's time for me to move roles, right? Which often happens in Q1, depending on different, bonus cycles and the like. So what's your retention strategy? Do you have save tactics in place? Are you doing, stay interviews and different people practices that will make sure you're continuing to engage them as they kick off this new year? So strategic workforce planning data, there was a past session that Hacking HR did on this topic specifically. So thinking through, how do I adjust my strategic workforce plan to incorporate learnings from 2024? Again, using that internal and external data and perhaps trends that you see in the market to put in place for the coming year in terms of your people plan. So a lot of what you all said, bringing that together, internal, external factors, and combining all of that insight to put into your people plan for the coming year.
Awesome. And love the callback, Melissa, to previous Hacking HR sessions as well. That's a good callback. And so I'm gonna, to reward you for that excellent, wrap, I'm gonna keep the spotlight on you. You mentioned that there have been several trends emerging in 2024, and I want to talk a little bit about return to the office as well. And so several trends like return to the office, especially at large tech companies, taking a firm return to office position alongside this push for AI. How should companies be thinking about these trends relative to their people and HR plans for 2025?
Yeah, in the US, a number of large tech companies have really enforced return to office. And so if you take Amazon as an example, there's been a lot of press about their tactic and what that may do to retention. So ultimately, when it comes to return to office, the primary thing that you need to think about is, what does our company need? So if I put those external trends aside, which of course we all follow, and we want to say, oh, should we be returning to office as well? My company happens to have a hybrid approach. Some companies that I, and peers that I've talked to, they're like, yes, we're hybrid, but people aren't really coming back. So what's important to you as an organization to have that in-person time, but also to provide flexibility, right? So what does the leadership say? What is your CEO's position? What's the vision for what you want the company to be? And using that as a grounding factor for how you inform your strategy. The reality is that some people have been accustomed to working from home now, and they really like that flexibility. So how do you find the strategy that's going to work for you, but then also internally, right? As you say, okay, we're going to be hybrid. How do you support the right work structure in your environment to make it work for you? I think companies are still figuring this out. And this is why I think it's going to continue to be a trend as we go back and forth a little bit with the pendulum on how is this going to work for organizations going forward. I think that flexibility is a key factor in retention. So whether it or not it is just flexible work timing, right? So start and end time, or it means a hybrid workforce, I think that flexibility is going to be key for people going forward. And so how you build that into your strategy, you're going to need need to align with your leadership team, of course, get their perspective. But then whatever that decision is, make sure you've got the infrastructure in place to support your team members through that, and to have some accountability metrics for how you make sure that it's a successful model, whatever you choose.
That's great, Melissa. And we're going to keep the spotlight on the RTO, or just return to office topic. Renzi, I saw you come off the mic a little bit. Anything to add to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I think like this RTO thing, it's quite similar also in this part of the world, although it's not as drastic as the US where it's complete RTO. What I'm seeing working with organizations in this part of the world is like they moved from, say, 3 days or 4 days a week working from home, now trimmed it down to 2 days to 3 days. Or they used to have, for example, overseas work for 1 month at a given time that you can club with your holiday. Now you can only do maximum of 1 month, which means you can only do 2 weeks plus 2 weeks of your holiday. So, and even with this, like people are feeling unhappy because it's like a donut that was taken away from you. You keep getting the donut like every day. But I think one thing that I have noticed, especially working with different companies, is a lot of companies have not been intentional when they introduce their flexible work policy or flexible work arrangement. It's like they just basically say like, okay, we're going to be doing 4 days a week working from home, and then that's it. Now we're seeing, that's why a lot of the senior leaders are asking for RTO. It's because they've seen now the impact on collaboration. They've seen the impact on culture. They've seen the impact on productivity, even though this is still a big question mark because there's still no real data to suggest that actually it has increased or decreased. A lot of these are like, oh yeah, I'm more productive. I'm actually better. I can do cooking while, like attending the calls and whatnot. What I'm trying to say also here is, I think there's huge opportunity for HR to really be more intentional next year, given the data that is available for them when it comes to really defining what does productivity mean for people working in the office and working like remotely, and somehow also be mindful about how is your culture being affected or has been affected by this flexible work arrangement, so that we can reassure leaders that maybe the culprit is not people working in the office. It's probably not having a clear guideline on people on how to be productive while working remotely or working anywhere else around the world.
Renzi, I love that you said that. As Melissa was speaking, I was also thinking about culture, but also data. We have enough years now, with a little bit pre-COVID, then during the COVID era now, to look at the trends to indicate what has returned to work or returned to the office or work from home done in an organization for retention, for engagement, for levels of satisfaction, and also being able to articulate the culture. If I think about one thing that has existed in organizations for some time is being able to put your hands on and speak to what is the culture and the experience. And oftentimes that was associated with the office or the work environment itself. So now that the office and work environment for many is at home, how do you bring that culture into their space? And what do you want them to experience as part of the organization? That's one part that I think a lot of organizations still struggle with. And I'll admittedly say that's an area that we're still thinking about in our organization as well, is what is that culture and how do you experience the culture wherever you are and wherever you sit and do your work? The other dynamic I would say that we're thinking about even more so next year is, as some offices, locations, and even countries in a multinational organization have some differences in approach of hybrid or return to work, how do you then engage teams that might have some individuals sitting collectively in an office and on a Teams call, and others that are sitting in their home office and feeling a part of that same conversation? So that level of inclusion and being thoughtful about what does return to work or a mixed environment look like becomes so much more important as we go into this year.
Yeah, and I'll just add, I think for all that's been said here, to me, what continues to resonate is transparency and being intentional. If you're communicating to your organization why you're doing it, what's in it for them and how it's going to impact them and their world and what they're working on, which then impacts the business goals. If they are fully bought into your org, your mission, and the goals that you have for the year or for a 3-5 year plan, then having that be called out of how it all connects to that is going to be very helpful for people to understand what you're trying to accomplish. And so I think that's like a key thing here is being transparent about the why and what's in it for them. And I think too, when it comes to, I love Renzi, when you were saying like, what does productivity and collaboration mean? I think that's really important to also have that foundation. And so many times, like, go into your org and ask people, what does that mean to them? And I can guarantee you are going to get 10 or 20 different answers, maybe even more. So it's really important to have that baseline. What does that mean for your org? And then build upon that. And Brigitte, I love the fact that you brought in the culture thing. One of the things that I do at Lilt, we actually implemented a new hire culture call, and we bring in our employee ambassador group. I sometimes bring in the executives when they're available to join me and kind of rotate throughout. But the goal is basically to get the new hires engaged in our culture, understand what it is. Again, that foundation of what is it to be here? What does it mean to work here? What does it mean to work with each other? And what are we expecting from each other? And the fun part I love the most is that when we're talking about our, Lilt calls them virtues, but most companies call them values, is that I actually engage with them and I ask them, what is the one value that resonates the most with you? Why did you come and join us from a values perspective? And that conversation is so engaging, and it really does help just kind of put that back in the brain and the mindset of everybody, because we're talking about it, we're engaged. The new hire cohort, they know who each other are, and now they're going to go off and have more conversations, even though someone was in Germany, someone was in UK, someone was on the East Coast, the West Coast, wherever they are in the world. I think that's really important. It's going back to being intentional. How do you bring people together and tie it back to your business purpose? And then they can actually latch on to that and continue to grow. And basically, if you think about a root system, it's that root, so that when the heavy times come with the winds and the rains and so forth, they're actually solidly rooted into your company and the org and your culture and the business and the why. So that's what I wanted to add to that.
Thank you, Guinevere. And you're so good at wrapping up too. I think I might be out of a job as well as tying it together. No, that's perfect. I love it. I think that's what it's the title of the session, actually. So we should all be wrapping up for 2024 too. But I just love, themes of like intentionality, transparency. I think a lot of employees oftentimes probably experience a lot of the work around bringing culture into a company. It ends at a slide of values, and there's not much more left there to kind of really unpack like the meaning behind it. How does this actually show up in my day-to-day? And so I love just kind of the call out there just to make sure that we're being intentional with a lot of those topics, especially in the larger context of return to office and, where should we work, hybrid, remote. It's really about bringing that culture wherever where you work, and flexibility being a key theme. So I keep giving rewards to people who are doing great. So Guinevere, I'm gonna keep the mic on you, just in terms of the other big trend that we were talking about earlier, AI technology. The landscape's changing very rapidly. Just given your experience and kind of having that 100,000-foot view on companies, like what role does technology going to play? Has it played in 2024? Will it play in 2025? How can it support strategic planning for this upcoming year?
Well, as I said, I love technology. And so one of the things that 2024 has really brought to the table is that there are more companies that are paying attention to HR now and actually creating tools and services that are going to support us to enhance us to become more business partners to your organization, which is super exciting because, back in the 80s, not to I'm age myself or anything, but we used to be called personnel, right? Like, because all we did was paperwork. And then you kind of fast forward human resources. Now we're a little bit more, now it's people ops, or, maybe there's some other terms that we're going to start hearing, but being able to free ourselves from the administrative burden and be able to have more time to be thoughtful about what is going on, being able to see around the corner. That's a really important piece, no matter what you are doing, what level you're at, being able to see around the corner and take that to your boss and be like, hey, I think this is going to happen. Or, hey, if we put this tool in, it might help us become more proactive. Again, I work with a lot of startup companies where we're just sitting in this reactive cycle. So helping bring in technology and tools, be more efficient and effective, and get into that proactive space is going to be very beneficial to businesses. So I've been enjoying seeing that happen. I think the struggle we'll see is that not only will it continue to happen, which is great, but it will, again, disperse your tools, right? You'll pick a tool that will help you source. You'll pick a tool that will help you be able to evaluate all the candidate applications. You'll pick a tool that will evaluate the recording conversations, whether you do them for interviews or sales or whatnot. And all of a sudden now you have all these tools that are very disparate. So I would say constantly look up and evaluate what's happening. And, as you start to implement tools, technology is moving fast. We all know that. And so what might be in the market today is going to be different than what it is tomorrow. And even with the tool that you have, they might actually be enhancing and improving and adding more to it that you might need to purchase. Or maybe that's when you decide, okay, this is time for me to think about the bigger picture. So constantly evaluating what's out there. I think we're going to be kept on our toes for sure. There's a lot out there. And I think what I enjoy the most is talking to these startup founders for the AI technology for HR and helping them understand what our pain points are. So I think you really need to think about that. You need to think about, what are you trying to accomplish, and what is the ROI of bringing on a tool throughout your org or even within a department. And then for HR, I feel like we are responsible too to help our other department heads be thinking about this, and how does it impact their employees and the morale within their team. Are they excited about it? Are they nervous about it? We talked about it earlier. A lot of people feel like they're going to be displaced because of AI technology. I don't think that's going to happen. I think as we help people upskill their own knowledge and experience, they're going to become power users of it, which is going to be very beneficial. And as Bernadette said earlier, it's all about the fact that they understand the org. They know how the org works. Maybe they've been there long enough to know where the skeletons are buried, right? And so it's important to make sure that people don't feel like they're on the road to being out. And so helping your department heads, the managers, understand that and work through that with them, and not just be focused on our own HR technology.
That's great. Yeah, just really kind of taking the perspective that AI is a tool that can help empower us as HR professionals, or in the case of Transcarent, a lot of our health guides and health professionals are leveraging it to similarly reduce administrative burdens so that they can focus on hopefully more meaningful work in the relationship, building that relationship with members, patients, to receive better care. So I have to imagine it's similar across industries as well, where AI should be seen a lot of times as a tool to help empower individuals, not always just seen as a tool for replacement as well.
Yeah, and I would add, sorry, I'd add one other thing. I would say that don't sit back as the HR, right? A lot of times this is technology, it belongs in IT, and maybe there's some conversations in your swim lane, but I would actually say this is going to impact people and the people team. Someone on the people team leader, or someone within the people team needs to be a part of the conversation. And so really push that door. If it's closed on you, push it and get into that conversation with IT and the technology of the business, because again, this is more than just the tool that people are going to use to do their business. This is going to impact your culture, your morale, and everything else that happens within your org.
Be a proactive stakeholder. Yes. So Renzi, I saw that you got off the mic. Anything you'd like to add to that conversation?
Yeah, because I'm liking what Guinevere was saying there. I think in addition to that, because there's a tendency also for a lot of organizations to go like shopping galore to the max on anything AI without really understanding the readiness of the organization in different levels or different business units or different divisions. So you could be buying the most sophisticated, most advanced AI, but you're just going to fall flat on your face if you implement this and you underestimated the readiness of people. But on top of that, I think when you plan for next year in terms of shopping for your AI and looking around what's best. I would also encourage, because this is an exercise I've done with one of the organizations I'm working with, is to look at the entire employee life cycle and prioritize which ones are your challenge areas for next year. Because the reality is you don't have an unlimited budget where you can just go shopping from A to Z of your employee life cycle. As nice as we would like to have everything AI, from attraction all the way to offboarding, who doesn't want that? But we also know for a fact that some organizations are okay with doing something manual. They're happy at the moment. It's working. It's not a problem area. Great, because you have limited budget. But you know what the problem area for you is. You don't have a recognition culture. Maybe that's an area for you to focus on this year. Or maybe your onboarding is not so good, so that maybe that is your focus area this year. Be intentional again on where you're going to be spending your dollars in terms of implementing AI, and also understand the readiness of people using that and the stakeholders around that. So then again, when it comes to educating them, you're not going to be creating fear that, oh, you're buying something AI related for onboarding if you have an onboarding officer. So that means you're going to be relieving me from my job next year. If you have like 10 of them or 12 of them, then you're going to be creating fear as well. So involve them also in the process of doing that, because you cannot also underestimate the fear of implementing something whilst you have people who are actually doing that job at the moment in your organization.
What Renzi is also kind of getting at, if I may add, is that there needs to be some governance for how AI is used in your organization. So what does it look like for you in terms of, if you're an IP company, right? How many employees are going to be using generative AI? Is it an internal tool? And so the right governance structure, to Guinevere's point, is going to take multiple stakeholders across the business. That is going to be the IT team, the people team, certainly for an R&D organization, how the key R&D stakeholders will implement that. So for me, it's governance and security. Certainly from a technology standpoint, how do you make sure you're protecting your company's IP along the way? But to one of the points in the chat is that it's going to be a tool that will enable us. And if you think of the talent team, so I run talent acquisition, and the technology that is coming forth from AI right now is really going to help drive talent acquisition, and I think in positive ways. And there's a fear perhaps that now AI is going to do all of your sourcing or all of your talent mapping. And I think it's not quite there yet, but somebody also made the point that there is the human element of it. I don't think AI is going to replace recruitment at all, because you're trying to hire people who are going to be a part of your organization. If we went back to some of the earlier comments on culture and on intentionality and values, it's going to be really hard for a tool to be able to find the right talent for your organization in a way that a human just does now, because they know deeply what it is to be a part of your company. And so for me, I am also very positive, as Guinevere and others were, on what AI is going to do for the people function to help drive us forward. And it's just going to mean that our jobs are going to evolve. And it's going to be quite a while before, right, some of that admin work will be taken off, but then we'll have time to shape what do our jobs look like in the future. And so it's going to be important for every people leader and every HR professional to really focus on what is the evolution of AI, whether it's generative or otherwise, that will shape our jobs, and how can we drive what we want our jobs to look like internally within our companies? What does the people function mean to a particular organization, so that you can help shape the outcomes for your team? So get engaged, get knowledgeable, don't let other people decide. As Guinevere was saying, you need to be part of the conversation and help drive that forward. And I'm excited about it. I think there are so many things that I'm ready for AI to take over from a people standpoint for us, that it's going to help us enjoy our jobs more and be more impactful to the organization.
That's great. I'm just going to call out a comment from the audience. I think from Jonathan too. It's AI can help us. It isn't helping us for a long time. It's just advancing with us, and whether we advance with it or not is up to us as professionals as well. So going to start with some closing questions to get perspectives from each member of the panelists before we close the session for today. Thank you so much, y'all, for contributing your perspectives thus far. But just wanting to take that future look into 2025 and get some of your advice or to the rest of the audience here for what they should be thinking about. So as we look to 2025, what mindset shifts should HR leaders make to navigate the changing workplace in this landscape? So Bridget, I'm going to ask you first and then hear hopefully from the rest as well.
Sure. So I think there's a few things. We've started to touch on it through today's conversation, Ryan. The first I would say from a mindset shift is be curious. That is so integral to anything we do as HR in whatever capacity we are in. Be curious about what's coming, what's changing, so that you can be on the proactive aspect of it and working with your leaders in your business. Any business as we go into next year is facing some level of challenge, some level of opportunity. And it's so important that we are curious to understand that, the complexities of it within the business that we sit, so that we can be really strong partners. I would also then add to pay attention to what the data is telling us in your business, in your industry, but also what is it telling about your people that sit within your organization. As it comes to the topics that we spoke about earlier around reskilling and upskilling the organization that the team members that you have today to be prepared for the future of your organization tomorrow. So being very proactive, being thoughtful. I would also say the last piece is prepare ourselves for the trends and shifts that will happen in the organization. We continue to talk about the multi-generational workforce. The part that's shifting, and that storyline is still true. We have to think about the multi-generational workforce and the dynamics of having employees in an organization that have different needs, different aspirations, different wants, and what they expect of the organization. The emerging aspect of that is those multi-generational employees are now turning into multi-generational leaders. So what does that mean and how they lead, how the style changes? The authenticity is always first and foremost, especially as we have newer generations moving into roles of leadership. But what does that mean then for the organization, for how you lead, for how you partner in the contracting that takes place between an employee and their leader? All that changes as our generations are moving into leadership in a different way. The other piece I would say on that last part is, as we have generations moving into leadership, we also have generations leaving. So what are the mindset shifts to be responsive and proactive in planning for your organizational knowledge? I can't remember who it was that said that there was a lot of historical knowledge that is embedded in the persons in the organization. More and more we're seeing that as generations move in and out of leadership, so we don't lose the bedrock of an organization's understanding what's important to them from a cultural lens, but also in how you go to market, what is important to run your business. So those are things I think that are important for HR as we go into next year, thinking ahead, being proactive, and being curious. Thank you.
Great perspective, Bridget. Guinevere, can I get your perspective on
You
what
come up with
mindset
that. I
shifts?
think she nailed it. Drop the mic.
We're done. Close it.
Yeah.
Close the session.
We're
right
done.
now.
Yeah, exactly. On top of that, I'll just add like being open, again, kind of curious, but being open, being agile. One of the things that I haven't heard as much lately, which I'm pretty excited about, is that, well, this is how we've always done it. Like that is no longer acceptable. Like if that is that is what you have in your mind, you need to learn, like you need to kick that out of your brain. That like if there's a delete button in your mind that you can hit, delete that, right? Like it doesn't matter that this is how you did it. Even if it's something like you implemented something last year and it's new, but it's, it's a year old or maybe 2 years old. Just because you just did it doesn't mean that it can't be enhanced and improved and actually be better for the org or for your team or for yourself. So yeah, I double down on that. Be curious. It's one of those things where it's just constantly, I think everyone listening is already in that mindset, right? They are listening because they're curious to hear from other experts and other leaders. And so kudos to those listening, and just continue to do that. Continue to be reading the different articles coming out, searching for different tools, talking to other people inside of our industry, right? And learning from each other and growing and staying agile. I think that's going to be key. Is just because you put it in last year doesn't mean we should continue putting it in this year. Like, budget season for most of us. So, do you keep that? I implemented an AI tool for recruiting. I liked it. My team liked it, but we're like, we probably think there's something else better out there. And so we're actually researching that right now. And we did not renew with that tool, and we plan on trying something else next year. So just because you have it doesn't mean you should continue using it if it's not working for you.
So learn, then unlearn it, then relearn it. And then hopefully everyone in the audience will not remember this conversation next year, or will unlearn everything that they've learned from the conversation next year. Love it. Renzi, how about your perspective? What mindset shifts should HR leaders be making to navigate the changing workplace of 2025?
I'll build on what Guinevere said about like agility. I think it's really big. Now we know that AI is happening at lightning speed, and it's changing really, really fast. Don't be married with your people strategy. Just because you're putting something now doesn't mean that it's, like the Bible of truth for the entire next year, 2025, or in the coming 3 to 5 years. So be agile. So the moment you see, based on the data that you have in your Q1 first month, be open to change, be open to pivoting and making complete upside down change of your people strategy based on the needs of your people. That's why my next mindset shift is around also hyper personalized experiences. So if your people strategy includes you shopping for the best, the best and the greatest of AI technology for 2025, make sure you take into account like how can we really personalize experiences of people within the organization. Even with some of the policies that you have, you might have to revisit that. So with AI, you might have to relook into your existing policies and procedures that will allow for that personalization so that you can really account the exact needs and wants of your employees, regardless of the size of the organization. I think with the power of AI, we can easily do that, especially if you plan to implement something like that in 2025.
Awesome. Thank you, Renzi. And Melissa, you have the pleasure of wrapping us all up for the year-end wrap-up. What mindset shifts should HR leaders be making to navigate the changing workplace in 2025?
Yeah, so I agree with all that's been said. So really thoughtful comments from everybody. And if there's something, maybe I'll give a practical way that HR people leaders can support this change and this need for agility. It's to prepare your managers to support their teams. So we've talked about the fast pace of change, the fast pace of technology. There's economic uncertainty in some countries. And so how do your managers be the support and that empathetic leader for your employees who are dealing with this fast pace of change and uncertainty? And, you can see that some roles may feel a sense of anxiety, as you saw in the chat, about what does this mean for my job? So from a practical standpoint, HR leaders can train their managers to help their employees deal with uncertainty. And part of that is just acknowledging everything that's in the environment, but also then keeping your team focused on the business goals at the same time. So finding that right balance of both support and I'm here for you, and it's our opportunity, despite the pace of change, to remain focused on our business goals and our objectives as we move forward. So finding that right balance for your managers, I think, is going to be super important as you approach all of these wonderful things that we've talked about in terms of how it's going to support our organization. But just remember that not every employee is going to be, not everybody is an early adopter. So how do you find your employees where they're at? Help them through that change and process, both to not be fearful, but also to be able to have that open mindset that Renzi was talking about. So from my perspective on all the wonderful things that has been said, it's to really take some time, focus on your managers and helping them prepare their teams for all that's to come.
That's great. Well, thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Renzi, Melissa, Guinevere, Brigitte, for being amazing panelists today to help us wrap up 2024 and really help the audience understand, some different ways, different perspectives, different frameworks of how to leverage some of those insights from 2024 to help plan for 2025 as well. Just thank you to the audience too. I know we have a well-represented audience. Got a couple members from the Philippines, Nigeria, Canada, Germany. So hopefully these perspectives today that were shared can help matriculate and be shared across multiple areas of the world too. So I'm really privileged to be able to get to extract some insights from you all today and hopefully amplify them. Hopefully the audience learned what the key takeaways and successes were for 2024, how these insights can be leveraged, what are critical areas that might need attention in 2025 based on the previous year, and how organizations can ensure continuous improvement through the year. And I think that last theme of just being agile, continuously learning is something that I can see in the audience comments too, as people are +1 winning right away. So, hey, thank you so much, panelists. And this was Hacking HR for November series. Thank you for your time. My name is Ryan from Transcarent, the one place for health and care, but I appreciate everybody's time today.
Thank you.
Good luck with 2025.
Good luck,
It's going to be
everybody.
another fun ride, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.